I never liked swimming pools. Not really. Something about the false cheer of chemically filtered water and shrieking laughter always rubbed me the wrong way. Give me a quiet porch, a cup of strong coffee, and a decent novel, that's more my scene. But when your best friend of over a decade begs you to host one final pool party before leaving town, you say yes. Especially when that friend is more like family. Especially when it's the only way to give them a proper send-off. And especially when it gives you a chance, just one, to knock Queen Karen off her chlorinated throne. My name's Joel Renshaw. I'm 35, single, a freelance architect who works out of the den of a modest but hard-earned ranch-style house at the edge of Willow Creek Shores, a neighborhood that looks a lot more peaceful from the outside than it really is. Don't get me wrong, the houses are beautiful. Old oaks line the streets like sentinels. The lawns are surgical in their symmetry. Every driveway seems to gleam like it's buffed by angels. But underneath the manicured perfection lies a web of petty politics, power plays, and the reigning monarch of it all, Karen Monroe. Karen is the head of our HOA. And if you just rolled your eyes at the mention of that, then you know exactly the type. She's the kind of woman who carries a laminated copy of the community rules in her purse, and I wish I were exaggerating. She's in her late 50s, walks like she owns the asphalt, and has a glare that could wilt a garden gnome from 50 paces. If you've ever lived under an HOA with a taste for tyranny, then you already know her. I didn't have beef with her at first. I moved here 3 years ago after buying the house from an older couple who couldn't keep up with the upkeep. It was a good deal, and I didn't mind the occasional HOA meeting or email chain about leaf blowers and mailbox paint. But over time, Karen started noticing me. Or maybe she just didn't like that I never bowed my head when she walked by. It started small. A warning about my non-regulation porch light, which, I'll add, was on the approved list 3 months prior. Then came the fines for leaving my trash bin at the curb for too long, even though I hauled it in an hour after pickup. She even filed a complaint about my unlicensed lawn furniture. I didn't know you could license a lawn chair, but Karen, apparently, did. So when my buddy Mark asked if we could throw his farewell party at the community pool, technically open for events with advance approval, I saw an opportunity. Not for revenge. Just a chance to show her that not everyone here folds under her rulebook. I filed the paperwork by the book. I mean by the book. Triple copies, hand-delivered, time-stamped, and verified. I hired a licensed lifeguard. I printed the guest list in 18-point font and laminated it, just in case Karen decided to drop by. Everything was perfect on the day of the party. The sun was out, the grill was sizzling, and Mark, grinning from ear to ear, was holding court near the diving board like some beach party king. Music played from a Bluetooth speaker low enough to meet noise guidelines. Families mingled. Kids laughed. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about project deadlines or HOA harassment. I just stood there, sipping ginger beer, thinking, maybe this neighborhood ain't so bad. And then I saw her. Karen. Not on the RSVP. Not on the waiver list. Not invited. She stood at the pool gate like some kind of aquatic inquisitor, arms crossed, sunglasses on, clipboard clutched like a courtroom gavel. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just walked along the fence like a warden making rounds. I watched her from the grill station, tongs frozen mid-flip, as she circled the pool. She'd pause now and then, near the snack table, near the restrooms, scribbling notes like a mystery shopper with a vendetta. Everyone else noticed too. Conversations got quieter. Laughter dimmed. It was like a thundercloud moving across a sunny lawn. I forced a smile and approached. Afternoon, Karen. Didn't think you'd be joining us. She didn't answer at first. Just stared out toward the deep end. Then, slowly, she said without turning, "This pool is a shared resource, Mr. Renshaw. I'm here to ensure it's being used responsibly. I kept the smile on my face, but something in her voice chilled me. There was no life to it. Like she wasn't talking about a party at all. Like she wasn't seeing the families or the floaties or the sun. Just something else. That's when I noticed her eyes weren't on the people. They were on the water. The deep end, specifically. She stared at it like she expected something to rise from it. Her grip on the clipboard tightened until her knuckles went white. I didn't ask questions. I just said, "Let me know if you see anything out of line." She finally turned, her mouth twitching into the faintest smile. "Oh, I will," she said. And then she walked off. No goodbyes. No threats. Just vanished into the hedge path like she'd never been there. About 40 minutes later, the lifeguard flagged me down. "Ah, sir," she said nervously, "you need to see this." She pointed to the deep end. Something dark was shifting just above the drain. At first, I thought it was a towel, maybe a dropped toy or a party favor gone soggy. But when she dove in and resurfaced, she held up a sealed plastic envelope. A letter. Handwritten. Still legible. I cracked it open poolside as a few guests gathered around. The name at the bottom made my stomach flip. Judith Harmon. I blinked. Judith Harmon. A name I hadn't heard in over 2 years. A name everyone had forgotten. Or maybe tried to forget. She had been the HOA secretary, long before my time. Rumors swirled about her brief illness and quiet departure. No obituary. No farewell. Her house sold fast, her name scrubbed from the HOA website like a typo. But here she was. Or at least, her handwriting was. The letter said, "If you're reading this, it means Karen has finally reopened the pool. Don't let her act surprised. She knows what happened here. She always did. And the water never forgets." I looked up from the letter, and I swear to you, the pool was silent. Not a ripple. Not a single sound. As if the deep end was holding its breath. And suddenly, I understood why Karen never swims. I stood there, soaked letter in hand, as the late afternoon sun turned gold and the breeze shifted cool. Around me, the party faltered. People noticed. Laughter grew brittle. Music lowered. It was like Judith Harmon's name cast a long, cold shadow over the pool deck. Mark sidled up beside me. "Everything okay?" I nodded automatically, still staring at the words. The envelope had been sealed tight, airtight almost. The ink hadn't run. Judith's handwriting was elegant, the kind you only see in old recipe cards and love letters, full of loops and grace, like she still believed in penmanship. "If you're reading this, it means Karen has finally reopened the pool." The line echoed in my head like a whispered dare. "I'm not sure," I told Mark. "But I think this party just became something else." By 6 o'clock, the last guests had left. I stayed behind to help the lifeguard clean up. She was quiet, maybe spooked by what she'd found. When I thanked her for diving in after the envelope, she just nodded and said, "That drain, it felt colder than the rest of the pool." Weird, huh? I didn't answer. But I knew what she meant. I'd felt it too. The HOA office was closed for the weekend, Karen made sure of that, but I wasn't waiting. I headed straight to my home office, pulled the shoebox labeled HOA junk from the closet, and dumped it across my desk. Over the past 3 years, I'd kept everything: notices, emails, newsletters, the HOA welcome packet with its ominously cheerful blue cover. Most of it was bureaucratic fluff. But somewhere in that pile of paper was the thread I needed to start pulling. I began with the most recent pool-related memos. According to HOA records, the community pool had been closed indefinitely for repairs in early 2021. No explanation. No timeline. Just shut down. I remembered thinking it was odd at the time, but Karen had blamed unsanitary conditions and moved on. Thing is, no repairs ever happened. No new tiles, no construction crews, no receipts in the monthly budget reports. Just a sudden closure and silence. That was 2.5 years ago. Judith Harmon disappeared in May 2021. I opened my browser and typed her name. Nothing. No obituary. No retirement announcement. Not even a blip on social media. It was like she'd been erased. Except for this letter. I read it again, this time slowly. Don't let her act surprised. She knows what happened here. She always did. I don't know what possessed me, but I drove back to the pool. It was well past dusk, and the area was deserted. The gate was locked, standard after-hours protocol, but I had the code. As a homeowner, I technically had access 24/7. I punched in the numbers and slipped inside. The pool lights glowed beneath the surface, casting an eerie, bluish shimmer across the water. It should have felt peaceful, even beautiful. But it didn't. I stood at the edge of the deep end. 10 feet down, I saw the drain cover, a wide circle with a rusted perimeter. Something about it looked wrong. I dropped to my stomach, reached out, and dipped my hand into the water. It was warm. Room temperature. Until I reached past the halfway mark. Then, suddenly, the cold. Not cool. Cold. Like winter. Like something was leaking into the water from below. I pulled my hand back, heart thudding, and sat up quickly. I don't know what I expected, maybe a noise, maybe a ripple, but the surface was still. Too still. Then I saw the plaque. It was half buried behind a bush near the lifeguard chair. Bronze. Unpolished. I hadn't noticed it during the party, and from the way the bushes were growing around it, I doubt anyone else had either. I brushed the leaves aside. In memory of those lost, 2021. No names. Just that. Lost. Not passed away. Not beloved. Lost. I stared at it for a long time. Then I heard the footsteps. Not many, just one pair. Heels, deliberate. Each step crisp against the concrete. I turned. Karen stood there at the gate, her arms crossed, face half lit by the nearby lamplight. She didn't speak at first. Then she said, calmly, "You shouldn't be here." I stood up. Funny. I was about to say the same to you. She sighed. You've made a mess of something you don't understand. I took a step forward. Then explain it. What happened in 2021? Why was the pool shut down? Why is Judith Harmon writing letters from the grave? Karen's face twitched, just slightly. She shouldn't have involved herself, she said. She didn't know how to leave things buried. I was too stunned to speak. Then she added, softly, if you're smart, Joel, you'll do better than she did. And with that, she turned and walked away. Leaving me alone at the edge of something I was no longer sure was just water. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words carved into that plaque, in memory of those lost, 2021. I kept replaying Karen's voice in my head, calm, cold, deliberate, like a teacher chastising a child for coloring outside the lines. She didn't know how to leave things buried. Judith Harmon hadn't disappeared. She'd been buried, maybe not physically, but socially, administratively, erased in the way only powerful people erase things they find inconvenient. And I couldn't stop thinking, who else had been lost? By morning, I was drowning in documents. I printed every HOA newsletter from 2019 to 2022. I combed through meeting minutes, scanned PDFs with OCR software to highlight names that appeared and vanished. It was slow work, methodical, and honestly, kind of terrifying. And then I found it. In the March 2021 meeting minutes, a name I didn't recognize. Elijah Petrowski. According to the log, he had been voted in as assistant pool supervisor, a volunteer role meant to enhance community oversight of pool safety and maintenance. But here's the thing, that was the only time his name ever appeared. No resignation notice. No removal vote. No mention of him again. Just, gone. I searched the public records. There was an Elijah Petrowski who lived at 123 Canyon Loop, a property about 5 blocks from me, but it had been listed for sale just 1 month after that HOA meeting. The seller? Next of kin. The buyer? Willow Creek Real Estate Trust. Guess who sits on that trust's board? Karen Monroe. I stared at the screen for a long time, hands cold despite the summer heat. That wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. I threw on a shirt and headed straight to 123 Canyon Loop. The house looked normal enough. Fresh paint, new mailbox, and a manicured lawn that practically screamed recent flip. I knocked, expecting no answer. To my surprise, an older man answered the door. I hesitated. "Hi, sorry. I know this is strange. I'm Joel, I live on the other side of Willow Creek. I was wondering if you knew anything about the previous owner?" Elijah Petrowski? The man's expression tightened. "I'm his uncle," he said slowly. "He passed." "I'm sorry," I replied. "Can I ask, what happened?" The man paused, then stepped out onto the porch. "He drowned. In the pool. Community 1. March 12, 2021. The exact week of that meeting. My mouth went dry. I didn't see anything in the HOA newsletters. "You wouldn't," he said bitterly. "They called it a heart condition. Blamed him for not disclosing a medical history. Said he shouldn't have been alone." "Was he?" The uncle looked at me. "I don't think so. He was a strong swimmer. He'd been a lifeguard at Lake Edna. But Karen Monroe, she made the whole thing disappear. Pressured my sister to sell the house, told her it would be too hard to stay." "And Judith Harmon?" I asked. His brow furrowed. "Judith tried to help. She was the one who pushed for an independent review." That's when Karen shut the pool down. Told everyone it was contaminated. My heart thudded. The letter. The drain. That inexplicable cold. "Do you still have any of Elijah's things?" I asked. "Anything he might have written down?" The uncle nodded slowly. "Just one thing. He disappeared inside, and came back a moment later with a small, water-warped leather notebook. Found this in a bag he left at my place," he said. "Didn't think much of it. You can keep it." Back in my car, I flipped through the pages. At first, it was boring stuff: schedules, pool supply inventory, water chemistry notes. But then, toward the end, a shift. Second drain doesn't match original blueprints. Feeds somewhere else. Need to talk to Judith. Found animal bones in filter chamber. Not raccoon. Too big. Karen said it's runoff from nearby creek. But creek's 200 yards away. Water's coming up, not down. Dreams getting worse. Same voice. Same whisper. Always from the drain. The last page was a torn scrap, barely readable. "If I don't come back, it's not an accident. The water is wrong. The drain is not just a drain." I closed the notebook. I had never been superstitious. Never believed in ghost stories or haunted houses. But something was wrong with that pool. Something worse than poor construction or HOA negligence. And Karen knew. I was sure of it now. But I still didn't know what the drain really was. And I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. I couldn't stop thinking about the notebook. The water is wrong. The drain is not just a drain. That phrase had coiled around my thoughts like ivy, creeping through every corner of my mind. I stared at blueprints for hours, cross-referenced building permits, even pulled old records from the county archives. Elijah wasn't imagining things. The community pool had been renovated in 2018, but not by any city-approved contractor. The project was labeled under a private donation initiative organized by the HOA. More specifically, by Karen Monroe. No blueprints were filed. No inspection documents. No engineer signatures. Just a brief summary and a receipt paid to a third-party company with a name I couldn't even find online. Something had been added to the pool. Something not in the plans. I needed to see it for myself. That Saturday night, under the cover of darkened nerves, I broke into the pool house. Technically, it wasn't breaking in. I used the same code on the back gate as I had before, the one Karen insisted wasn't for after-hours use. I wore a dark hoodie, carried a waterproof flashlight, and stuffed Elijah's notebook into a dry bag. The pool was dead silent. Even the breeze seemed hesitant. I slipped off my shoes, peeled off my hoodie, and stepped to the edge of the deep end. I shined the beam into the water. At first, all I saw were the gentle wavering lines of the tiled floor. But then I caught the shape. Dead center. Not just the usual circular drain cover, but a second structure. A hatch. It was about 4 feet wide, flat against the pool floor, rimmed with dark steel. No markings. No bolts. It wasn't part of any standard design. And it definitely didn't look like something meant for maintenance. My breath fogged in the chill air. Elijah was right. I slipped into the water, the shock of cold slamming into me like a punch. But I kept going, kicking down to the hatch, my flashlight beam cutting a narrow tunnel through the darkness. The water grew colder the deeper I went. 10 feet. I hovered in front of the hatch. My flashlight glinted off the surface, and that's when I saw it. Scratches. Dozens of them. Long, uneven gouges across the steel. As if someone had tried to claw their way in, or out. I felt the panic building in my chest, but I forced myself to steady my breathing. I reached for the edge of the hatch, feeling along the seams. That's when I noticed it wasn't sealed. It was hinged. And from the look of it, it hadn't been opened in years. Or maybe it had, and someone had made sure it stayed that way. Suddenly, the water around me shifted. Just slightly. A change in pressure. Like a soft current. It was coming from the hatch, from beneath it. A low, steady pull. Not strong, but constant. I aimed the light down. And that's when I saw the eye. It flashed past the beam, just a glimpse, a pale, round shape reflecting light with a slick, terrible intelligence. I kicked back in panic, lost control of my breathing, and shot to the surface gasping. I hauled myself out of the water, coughing, the flashlight clattering to the concrete beside me. I lay there, soaked and shaking, heart racing so hard it made my ribs hurt. Then I heard the click. The pool house door opened. Karen. She stepped out slowly, flashlight in one hand, clipboard in the other, wearing the same tan windbreaker she always wore to HOA meetings, but this time, the smile was gone. "I told you to leave it alone, Joel," she said. I stood up, dripping, chest heaving. "What is that hatch?" Her face didn't twitch. "You weren't supposed to see it." "What's down there?" I demanded. Her voice was calm. "A mistake. One the HOA's been hiding since 2018. It was never supposed to open again. It moved, I said, stepping forward. There's something alive down there. Karen sighed and lowered the flashlight. It isn't what you think. It's not a monster. It's not supernatural. But it is dangerous. And it's older than this development. What does that mean? She hesitated. Then said, before Willow Creek was built, before the HOA, before the streets even had names, this land was used for something else. A research site. Underground tunnels. Geological surveys. A prototype station. For what? Karen stepped closer. We were never told. Just that the ground beneath this area was unstable. When the developers came in, they paved over it. Said it wasn't a problem anymore. Until the renovations. Until the hatch. I shook my head. So you just built a pool on top of it? It was already there, she said quietly. We just didn't know it was still active. And Elijah, he was the first one to notice. He saw the currents. Heard the noises. You covered it up. Her jaw tensed. I contained it. And Judith? Judith tried to expose everything. She left that letter in the drain. I only found out after she was gone. Gone? I said. Or disappeared. Karen didn't answer. I stepped back, heart pounding. You can't keep hiding this. People have a right to know. She looked at me, for once, with something close to pity. You really think they'd believe you? A pool conspiracy? A secret hatch under the neighborhood? No, Joel. The HOA doesn't deal in truth. We deal in appearances. And if that thing wakes up again, appearances won't save us. What do you mean, wakes up? Karen took a long breath. Because we think it's sleeping. But last week, for the first time in years, we heard it hum. Karen left that night without another word. No threats. No clipboard slaps. No demands for silence. Just one parting glance over her shoulder as she walked out of the pool house and vanished into the dark, a look that said, "You've crossed the line. You'd better be ready for what's coming next." I stood there dripping on the tile, cold down to the bone, staring at the water and thinking about Elijah, Judith, and whatever the hell was humming beneath that hatch. The rational part of my brain wanted to dismiss it as faulty equipment, an echo in the pipes, maybe even a buried generator. But that quick flash beneath the surface, was no trick of the light. Whatever lived under Willow Creek wasn't mechanical. And it wasn't sleeping anymore. Back at home, I dried off, wrapped myself in a blanket, and stared at Elijah's notebook. I flipped back through the pages, not for new information, but for something else, a pattern. A missed clue. Anything. That's when I noticed it. Every entry about the drain was dated late at night, always after 11 p.m., and always when the pool was officially closed. Elijah had been watching it. Listening. Like it called to him. And in the margins of his last few entries, a strange symbol kept appearing, a circle, a jagged line running through it, and 3 short vertical strokes around the edge. It looked like something between a map and a warning. I traced it with my finger, then grabbed my own copy of the Willow Creek development plans. Nothing matched. Not the street layout, not the sewer lines, not the irrigation system. Until I laid the symbol over the original survey map, the one from before the HOA, before the development. Back when this land had been part of a decommissioned federal research compound. That's when it clicked. The symbol wasn't random. It was a grid marker. The jagged line? A fault line. The circle? The hatch. And the 3 strokes? Coordinates, leading to other sites. I marked them. One was the pool. The second, a patch of land near the tennis courts. The third? That one hit me like a punch. My own backyard. I stared at the page in stunned silence. My heart began to thud. When I first bought the house, the inspector mentioned something odd, a sealed wellhead beneath the flower bed near my shed. Nothing to worry about, he'd said. Probably capped decades ago. I threw on jeans and boots and ran outside with a flashlight. My breath fogged in the night air as I knelt beside the flower bed. The soil was damp, but loose. Like something had recently been disturbed. I dug. Hands tearing through dirt, heart pounding, until I hit it, metal. Cold, flat, circular. Not a wellhead. A hatch. Smaller than the one in the pool, but nearly identical in design. I froze. If there were 3 of these things, what were they for? Access points? Observation chambers? Or something worse? I ran inside and started typing. I searched everything: federal archives, research databases, old scientific journals. I stayed up all night, and finally, buried deep in a digitized folder from 1982, I found it. A decommissioned Department of Energy project called HOA, the Aquatic Unnatural Resonance Array. Experimental technology designed to monitor seismic patterns in aquatic systems. But it wasn't just a sensor. It was a containment system. The records were vague. Sanitized. Redacted. But I found a memo. Subject demonstrates significant reactive behavior to sonic frequencies between 40 to 43 Hz, visual observation confirmed, bioluminescent pigmentation along ventral side. Subject designated RO3. Recommend indefinite submersion. Recommend silence. Bioluminescent. Reactive. Indefinite submersion. Silence. That hum Karen mentioned? The one they heard last week? It was a frequency. Someone, had triggered it again. I sat back in my chair, trembling. Judith didn't die because of Karen's politics. Elijah didn't drown because of a weak heart. They got too close to something that was never supposed to wake up. And now, it was waking. I didn't go to work. Didn't check emails. I spent the entire next day cataloging everything I'd found. Letters. Photos. Coordinates. Audio from the pool's drain hum, which I'd recorded during my dive without even realizing it. By 5 p.m., I had a file the size of a murder case. I knew what I had to do. I was going public. Not to the HOA. Not to the police. To the press. I sent an anonymous email to a journalist I knew from my college days. Attached the documents. Gave them a tip: look under Willow Creek shores. Then I backed it up on a hard drive and mailed a copy to a P.O. box across town. And just when I thought I could finally breathe, there was a knock on the door. Karen. No clipboard. No smile. Just her, soaked from the rain, face hard as steel. I know what you've done, she said. I didn't deny it. People deserve to know. You think you're a hero, she said. You've just signed everyone's death warrant. And before I could respond, the earth shook. Not a tremor. A deep, pulsing thud, like something massive had shifted underground. The water tower's lights flickered. Alarms blared down the street. And from the direction of the pool, a scream. Then another. Then silence. Karen didn't move. She looked at me with a face hollowed by dread. And whispered, "It's not sleeping anymore." I ran. Not away, toward the screams. Karen shouted something behind me, but the blood pounding in my ears drowned her out. I tore down Marigold Court, flashlight beam bouncing off mailboxes and tree trunks, past tidy lawns and shuttered windows. The air crackled. The ground kept pulsing, not like an earthquake, but a steady, rhythmic beat, like a heartbeat buried beneath concrete. When I reached the pool gate, it was already open. Not forced. Just swinging gently, like someone had walked through it in a hurry, or never returned. The floodlights were out. All of them. Only the greenish-blue underwater glow remained, and even that shimmered like it was flickering. Something had stirred the water. No. Something had risen. There was no sign of whoever had screamed. Just a single flip-flop by the shallow end and the sound of water dripping steadily onto tile. Then I saw it. The hatch. Wide open. Not cracked. Not loose. Gone. The steel plate that had once sealed the pool floor now lay propped against the deep end wall, slime-slicked and dented from beneath. And where it had been? A dark hole. No ladder. No drain grate. Just blackness and depth, like a wound in the world. I approached slowly, knees shaking. From somewhere below, a low hum began to rise. That same frequency from Elijah's notes. But now it wasn't subtle. It was alive. Vibrating the tiles under my shoes, resonating in my ribs, making the lights overhead flicker harder. I felt it in my teeth. My bones. And then I heard it. A voice. Not words, not exactly, but a presence. Thick, syrupy, ancient. Like a whale song laced with static. It wasn't speaking. It was remembering. And I could feel it remembering me. My dive. My questions. My trespass. Then it stopped. And from the water rose a shape. It wasn't a creature in the traditional sense. No scales or claws. No glowing eyes. What broke the surface was mass. Motion. Like oil moving underwater, forming and unforming, limbs that never stayed limbs, eyes that opened and blinked and vanished, a mouth that stretched into something not built for speech but feeling. It didn't climb out. It loomed. One massive ripple rolled through the water, and then stillness. I didn't run. I couldn't. My legs refused to obey. My brain couldn't even scream. All I could do was see, and realize that this thing had been waiting. Not to destroy. Not to hunt. But to return. To its cycle. To its pattern. Karen appeared behind me, breathless. "Joel," she whispered, staring at the water like it was the sky cracking open. "It's not here to hurt us." I turned to her. "Then what is it here for?" She took a long breath. "It wants its name spoken again." "What does that mean?" She looked at me, eyes haunted. "Judith knew. That's why she died." Elijah tried to listen, and it claimed him. I kept it sealed, tried to keep it dormant, but your party. "The vibrations," I said. "The music. The laughing. The voices." Karen nodded. "You woke it up." The mass in the pool surged upward, then fell still. I felt something inside me shift, not fear anymore, but recognition. Like I was remembering a song I'd heard in a dream, one I could never quite place. I stepped forward. Not bravely. Just inevitably. "Joel," Karen reached out. "I have to know," I said. "I need to know." I knelt at the edge, peered down into that endless dark hole. The hum deepened. And then, like a whisper at the base of my skull, I heard it. We were here before the streets. Before the concrete. Before the walls and the rules and the names. We remember. 1,000 images hit me at once, memories not mine. Tunnels pulsing with salt water. A vast ocean beneath the land. Scientists in hazmat suits running from something they could not quantify. Steel hatches. Electric barriers. And finally, silence. Then Karen pulled me back. "No more," she said. "If you keep listening, it won't let go." I collapsed onto the tile, breath ragged. And just like that, the light flickered once, then steadied. The hum vanished. And the shape beneath the water? Gone. The pool was still. The hatch sealed again, not physically, but spiritually. As if the thing had retreated because it had said what it needed to say. I left the pool that night without speaking. Karen disappeared too. I don't know where she went. I haven't seen her since. The next morning, HOA signs went up, pool closed for seasonal maintenance. Standard font. Neutral tone. As if nothing happened. But I know. We all do now. Because the article I sent to the press? It never ran. The journalist disappeared. The link I had to the federal documents? Gone. Scrubbed. But the screams? The vibrations? The stories whispered at the edge of the shallow end? They remain. It's been 6 months. The hatch hasn't opened again. But every now and then, I wake up at 3:13 a.m., always 3:13, and I hear it again. That low, humming sound beneath the earth. A whisper in the pipes. A pressure in my spine. I walk to my backyard, flashlight in hand, and shine it toward the flower bed. Just in case. Because the water may be still now. But I know something is still down there. Watching. Waiting. Remembering. And next time? It won't settle for silence.